Hey, assalamu alaikum, guys. We are back with the lovely Naseem and myself on another podcast for the road to happiness. So, this week's topic is to do with what we actually look for when we're looking for someone and what we should actually look for. So, I'm going to let Naseem take the lead on this one because I want to know.
Yeah. So thank you very much actually for recommending that we do this topic today, Shafina, because I think it's an important one and it's been playing on my mind the last few interviews I've done with people that want to work with me. Um, Specifically recently, there's been a number of people, I would say at least 10 to 15 people who have gone with what they think they need. And these are so when I first speak to them, these are my requirements. There still will be about 10% who won't change their mind, and that's okay. But it's really interesting how 90% of people will change their mind and think, actually, you know what, maybe I'm doing tick boxing here, maybe I'm looking at criteria more than the person here. And the more you sort of have a deep dive into the conversation, the person's realizing themselves, what am I doing? I want to pick a good person with a good heart, who's got good understanding, whose family values are the same as my family values. And we talk about it a lot privately when we speak about it, Shafina, is how much we admire people for their attitudes and their chivalry and their, how emotionally intelligently they deal with situations, like how much we love that about people. And if we love it, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would love that as well. But again, it gets a bit difficult when you're trying to select a partner, because it's a bit like looking through the wood for the trees kind of situation. Yeah. What's your personal thoughts on it?
Well, I suppose when you're sort of like growing up or whatever, you just think, oh, I want someone to look like this and have you think of like sometimes outside, or okay, I suppose at the time growing up, I wasn't thinking they should have a house or have a home and be like stable and stuff. You just don't kind of think about that sometimes. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but there might be other people out there where you just kind of go blind and look for this spark and just go with the flow with it. But then you don't actually think, actually, can this person provide? Can they support? I think for me, these are important things now. Look, like now looking at it, I'm like, okay, I don't care who if there's a spark or something like that. I need to know kind of actual facts, because you're actually building a life together. And I think this is one thing that I've had to learn myself, that you've got to figure out if this person is worth you building a life together with. That's one thing. And obviously, yes, having the similar values, because everyone's values are different. I'm not saying there's good and bad. There's just different types, right? So this is what I've realized: there's different types of values, and I think you've really got to ask the right questions and pay attention without letting your emotions come forward. You've got to think logically about the situation. Again, not so much tick boxing, but in a sense, I kind of at the moment would, like, bit further down the line, I probably would just double check the main criteria a little bit. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you're repeating a pattern and just going with it and thinking, oh, if that does that make sense? I
Yeah,
don't know if I've confused anyone, but
definitely, definitely.
yeah.
And for most people, I think somebody having um, a good emotional intelligence in terms of not judging, thinking before they speak, it's trying to walk a mile in your shoes. That's a very important gift to have in a husband or wife.
Yeah, I mean, these were one of my three, if we go way back into the podcast, one of my three needs, and that
Mm-hmm.
was definitely non-judgmental type of situation to be in. Especially, I mean, there's everyone has different sort of lifestyles and everything, and mine's very different with the acting background that I come from. It's not for everybody, and unfortunately we do get judged a lot. Like, I get trolled on. Even yesterday I was a bit annoyed but I got trolled on social media, and it happens all the time, but you don't want it from the person that you're meant to be sharing your life with. That's where it hurts. So for me, it's definitely a non-judgmental situation. It's a big thing, yeah, for sure. And I suppose another thing I was going to say is that when you have someone of a similar type of way of thinking and being, then it makes it a lot easier. From what I've experienced and seen from others around me, when they are not on the same, they've kind of gone blindly into something and not really thought about compatibility wise. When serious situations are happening in life, unfortunately, they aren't approaching it in the same manner. And then there's very much so misunderstandings when I'm seeing it from both sides, you know, and I want to try and explain to one person, hey, this is how that person was feeling, go back to the person, say, this is how that person was feeling. And unfortunately, because there is a different level of sort of emotional intelligence and understanding, sometimes I feel that situation in particular may not work out, only because they didn't go back in time in the beginning and realize actually we don't actually match on that level. Yeah. So you will save yourself a lot of pain and heartache in the future, if you can get this right in the beginning.
I think the key thing that, if you ask me as somebody who's been doing my work for the best part of 25 years, the key thing I think I would ask everyone who works with me to look for, I think the two things that are kind of neck and neck are accountability and responsibility. So someone who's financially responsible, emotionally responsible, mentally responsible will not take advantage of their partner. They will take responsibility. And I find that when I'm doing divorce therapy, when I'm doing marriage coaching, and I was at the Westfield event in Shepherd's Bush Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the amount of couples that kind of took me aside and trying to share with me their issues and problems within their marriage, all of it was around financial, emotional, and mental responsibility, the other person not taking responsibility for the relationship. And these people have been matched because they were wealthy, or they're matched because they were stunning, or they were matched because they were from the same caste or same background, which are not reason to find a companion. Whatever your rizq is, the way I look at it is, whatever you're meant to have, Allah will give it you. Do you get me? So, but you can't, and you and I both know, I think that's why we connect so well, is we're grafters. Like, we work really, really hard. And I think when someone can recognize that in someone else, there's an immediate respect. And I think if you marry someone who has that immediate respect you can give them, that's a really solid foundation for a marriage.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could go on my sort of viewpoints on certain things, but yeah, I mean, holding on to that moment, I wanted to ask you actually, how was the event? It was 3 days. I know it's not.
It was really, really good.
Yeah.
It was incredibly busy. They said they had the biggest footfall, bigger than Boxing Day for the Eid event. It's the first Eid event they've done there. And it was very, very busy. It was massive, and it was a complete amazing experience to be there, because obviously there's a lot of people who tender to put forward, and there's only certain companies that will get selected to be in Westfield. So I thought, wow, like we got in, and it was incredible, the amount of people we met. And you know, it's nice to meet people from all different walks of life. But it was interesting. So I thought, so how does this work and all of that? Tell me more. And parents and siblings and cousins and friends, I don't know. We must have given out thousands of cards and things like that, and spoke to hundreds of people. But I really loved it. I'm looking forward to the next one. And I met some really lovely people, so I'm excited to work with them. Yeah.
Oh, inshallah. I wish I could have made it, but you know, I've had my other commitments here. Maybe the next one
I knew. I was going to say that next time I'm going to do mine, I'm going to plan it ahead around your commitments. I'd love for you to be there. I think you'd love it. It'd be a really great experience, inshallah.
Inshallah, definitely. And yeah, super excited for what we have coming up anyway. So yeah, back to this. Going back to the topic of, yeah, unfortunately that does happen as well, where they're like, oh, he or she is from this. I mean, the whole casting, I don't quite get it so much, but you know, it's there, it exists, right? But they don't actually think about the person, how they are actually as an individual, because at the end of the day, even where we come from, who we are as an individual is totally different. Right? So, and you want to get those two people to be matching nicely. And I suppose, I mean, what would be like your top 3 questions to ask somebody, say, if, you know, when you're getting to know them, to see?
Yeah.
Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, you have kind of. But I think the first part of, before you ask your top 3 questions, is you're going to understand, is that person comfortable speaking with you? Because if that person's not comfortable speaking with you, you can ask your top 3 questions and you'll get answers are not even probably honest from that person. So once you establish a bit of compatibility and you can relax and have a conversation, I think the top 3 things that you should learn about is their upbringing, their childhood, because everyone's a product of their environment. So if you have an idea of how they've been raised and the kind of principles and values their parents, their grandparents have raised them with, and they bring that into their married life. So that's almost like, what cultures and traditions would you bring from your childhood, your family life into your marriage? I think that's quite important to understand what your life may look like if you choose that person. So I think that would be number 1. Number 2 would definitely be where they are with their faith and where they are with their moral compass, in terms of how important is it for them to help others and to put other people as a priority, or do things for their community or their family, and have that little bit of selfless approach to life as well. And the third thing, I think, would be attitude to life. So, as we spoke before, if you're a grafter and you want to get it done and you've got your to-do list and you're a doer, not a thinker, a doer will definitely be a better option to marry than a thinker, because someone who thinks about it can still be thinking 5 years on, but a doer will just get up and do it. It's done, so from my personal experience, those would be the top in my mind. What's your thoughts on what I've said?
You've definitely sort of opened my eye a little bit in terms of when people say things and they're thinking about it, and I think I saw a post recently about potential. We tend to look at people and think, oh, potentially they can do this and that, and listening to what they say. And I was actually having a conversation with someone recently. Bless, I think they were asking me about somebody else or whatever the situation was. So maybe somebody must have asked them to ask me about them. I don't know what it was, but anyway, it is what it is, what it was, or whatever. And so I just kind of said, oh, in the nicest way, I was like, well, I'm not actually interested, but just generally speaking, if I was speaking for a friend, has the person got their own home? Have they got? They're like, no, but. And I went, there's no but. If I'm going to recommend someone, and this person's going to be like saying they're going to look after someone, or they're looking for a wife, whatever, they need to be in a position where they have a place to put that wife in, like in the nicest way possible. I was like, because you go through certain things in life, and if the person can't look after themselves right now, I mean, this is just my viewpoint. Maybe it's totally different to someone else, but this is where I'm at the moment, and they haven't got their own roof over their head. Then how are they suddenly trying to pick up a wife and then look after her? So, and then the person that asked was just like, well, fair enough, but that was because I now was able to speak up and say, this is how it is. And I think before I had coaching sessions with you, or support sessions, I don't think I would have spoken like that before.
Yeah. And yeah, progress. Love it.
I hope you're proud teacher.
Well done. No, it's really important. I think if you can't think of your husband as a provider, protector, and a positive person, you're doing yourself a just can't get that.
Yeah, it's
just justice. I can't say it. What? How you?
Yeah, I understand the word. Yeah, so this is the thing. So for me, I'm just like, you've got to really understand what you are, and then if you can make it clear what your needs and wants are, that's the thing, and what your requirement is, because they're going to have theirs. They're going to think, yeah, I want a woman like this, that. I mean, I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. Obviously, this goes for guys the other way around as well. You might think or a woman might be like, I want a man like this, and this. Well, then you got to look at yourself as well and be like, okay, what are you sort of bringing to the table as well? And this is something I've had to learn myself too. It's not like it's always just one person's fault or something like that. You learn through different experiences. And so for me, okay, I'm like, okay, this is what I could do better with. I could work on this and that. And when I'm ready, then I'll go forward with it. But right now I'm totally not. So yeah, you've got to make it clear and be okay with saying, hey, you know what, I need you to have a home and live in your own house, so I have a space, and I need this and that. But the problem is that I feel from experience, perhaps we haven't been taught this. We weren't told, you know what, stand your ground and speak up for what you actually want. So then the other person's just like, oh, it's fine. Yeah, you know, I've got her, whatever. I'll just have her live here and it's fine and everything's fine. And, you know, and then you've come from where you were to some place where you're really unhappy. And the problem was, I suppose, the communication wasn't done very clearly in the beginning, you know, and actually they're just like, or they may have, the person can say, yeah, I'm going to do this, this, and this. But when it comes to actual fact, they're not going to do that for you. And they're going to say, well, you're going to have to just settle for this because this is how it is. And I can't do that for you. You know, so it's really about having that balance between, kind of in a sense, having a bit of a checklist in terms of, you need to know what you actually want. And then also find out that, does that person match with you, with your values?
And everyone's
handle
sorry to speak over you there, Shafina, but everyone's got like a slightly different take on that. So let's say you've been communicating someone for a good 6 months, 8 months or something like that. You know that they're hard worker, you know that they have the true one to take care of you. You can see from the habits that they have, how they communicate, the way they gift you, the way they ask after your family, the way you can see that they have a genuine concern for you. Yeah. So if you have that, then on the large scale of things and on looking on things today, there isn't any harm in putting things together and putting your resources together to do that. So it's not a case of every single person's going to want their own home. But I will be honest, in my environment, majority of men that I speak to say, sorry, I'm coming to you at 32. I'm sorry, I'm coming to you at 28. But I really wanted to have some money in the bank. I wanted to be able to financially support my wife before I spoke to a matchmaker. And, you know, I do respect that a lot, because I think that, you know, your responsibility is financially is one of your responsibilities Islamically, where men are taught that from a young age. But in the world we live in, you know, if you do, you know, pool your money with your wife, wherever, then you can have that slightly better house or that slightly better car. But being in a position where you can actually provide a good standard of living for your companion is a good place to be. I definitely do believe that it's a good place to be.
Definitely. I mean, 100%. I do believe that, okay, not everyone's in that position. However, it's good to know that people are saying, oh, I'm not in that position, but I need to get there. You know, like they know that they need to do that. And they're like, okay, now I want to focus and try and work on that. And there are so many ways. I mean, that's a whole different story and podcast altogether on, you know, working, earning money. We're in the day of, it's 2023. There's so many opportunities online here and there if you really wanted to. And I have a very good friend of mine, and that person hustles. There's no excuses for that person. If that person can't figure out, that person will make sure they figure it out and make sure they provide for their family. So I think now the bar is so high because I've got this really good friend that's, you know, just has zero excuses for anything and was like, okay, cool, I'll do it. You know, and I respect that person so much, mashallah. And I just think, you know what, this is an example of a true provider person. There was something else that I was gonna say as well. Gosh, my mind has gone so blank. But I think it's the other thing I was gonna say is also yeah, I suppose if you want to put your money or, you know, your finance together with that's between the individuals and that conversation. But I was just going to say that there has to be a good connection and communication and trust. And, you know, if you feel, if you,
and even from a fair perspective, let's say what property or what money or whatever you earned that was yours before marriage, I think that should still remain yours or his. You know, God forbid things don't move forward. We are in a position where 70% of marriages don't work. Even with the Mink's last talk, he said 60 to 70% of marriages don't work. So, you know, if you are being a little bit cautious, saying like, well, we can put our money together now, like for the future for this, but then what you have and what I have is ours, is your own individual. Until such times, let's say you've been married for 5-10 years and it all just mushes into one. But initially, I think just being quietly cautious. I personally don't think there's anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that can be put into the nikah contract because that's something that, you know, not everyone's aware of. You can actually, obviously you have the nikah nama and I guess you put the addresses and the signing, whatever. But actually you can have a contract aside this like alongside it.
There is a standard contract, but you can add to that
Add
standard
to it.
contract. Yeah.
Yeah, you can add to it and what your requirements are. You could even say, hey, whatever money is mine beforehand, and whatever the situation is. And so yeah, these are things that people need to know as well. And no one, I think, should take offense to that. I think
No, I
it's
don't think
important to have your own back.
it isn't. It isn't. People do get awkward when it comes to money. I've seen it a lot of times, especially conversations I've witnessed. But it shouldn't be the case. You should, whatever Allah's given you, alhamdulillah, that to be fair, that money isn't yours technically. That money is still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, and He's just watching how you use it. So one of the bayans I listened to during Ramadan, it's still kind of strong in my heart at the moment, was very much that when you sit in your car, it's not your car, it's Allah's car. He's watching who you help and where you take people and what you do with it. It's not your home. It's a borrowed home. And you live in that home for the time that you're here, but your final abode is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your final destination is with Allah. So anything that you're doing to prepare for that life, with the things that you have, with the money, the resources, the help, the intelligence, what you're doing for your surroundings, and even like my daughter-in-law, bless her, she bought me a plant for my Eid, and she's like, Mom, try not kill it. I kill anything that's like, I can't make anything, especially plants, I can't keep them alive. She goes, honestly, it's going to be really hard to kill this plant. I'm like, okay. And even the plants will witness for you when you're doing your prayers, or you're doing your du'as, or you're doing your good deeds. Anything living, your pet cat, anything, they will all give witness on the Day of Judgment for what you did on dunya, which I thought was a really powerful reminder, because sometimes you forget these things.
Well, no, I really appreciate that. I mean, because you've just shared that, like, alhamdulillah, mashallah, there's so many things that, go off in my mind, and just, and you think, oh, I'll take that little bit, and I'll try and see how I go about, because just that consciously being aware of these things. There's an imam that I watch on Instagram, it just pops up on the news feed, and he was just saying, when we go to drink water, like just before this, I was like, oh, I can drink it, before the podcast. Because before, when we were filming the podcast in Ramadan, I was like, oh, I'm so thirsty. Oh, I can't drink right now,
Yeah.
So anyway, I drank water in the day, and I was like, oh, thank God, but you still question it, and you're like, oh, no, I can't drink it, because you're still conditioned. And he was saying we were conditioned in Ramadan to be a certain way, to be conscious of how we speak, to, really be careful about any conversations, or just in case you backbite or whatever, or any sort of foul language, because it happens. Sometimes you get annoyed and you think, oh, but then you say fudge cake, or whatever, some sugar puff. I have weird names that pops out. I've tried to really work on it, and so he's just like, why can't we continue to be conscious like that, even outside of Ramadan? Be mindful. Okay, we might not be fasting right now, but let's just be mindful in all the other ways that comes along when we are fasting. And if we live our life that, like, it's every Ramadan, inshallah, we have another one, and another one, as many as possible, to become better. So the fact that you've just mentioned that, it's just like, oh yeah, it's another bit of mindfulness. Because obviously I drove my car this morning, alhamdulillah, and I'm so appreciative of my car, and it gets me to my work, it gets me to my jobs, it gets me everywhere. I'm able to take my family shopping, and just whatever I need to get with that. And actually, it's whatever good you can do with the things that you have. It's it's a beautiful thing,
and that's a sign, actually, and we'll end on this note, because I think it's a very beautiful note to end on, is that when you come back from Umrah, you come back from Hajj, or you come out of Ramadan, or you come out of a prayer, and you continue those good deeds on, you continue to do selfless charity acts, or you continue your prayers, or you continue to be mindful, as you're saying, that's a sign that your Ramadan was accepted. It's your sign that your Hajj was accepted, because Allah is allowing you to continue those habits that you created into your day-to-day. So I thought that was actually really powerful.
That's made me emotional. Oh my God. This is the Road to Happiness podcast with Shafina crying every time.
Happy tears, though. Happy tears.
Yeah, happy tears. That's really deep. Obviously, my story and journey a bit. So that that's a beautiful note.
Yeah. So, my darling, and everyone else who's listening to us, thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to our podcast. We welcome all the questions that come through. We try our best to pick up topics that are coming through from you guys. And it's been a really great one today as well. So thank you everyone for listening to The Road to Happiness. And thank you, Shafina, for being part of the podcast today.
No worries. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to this podcast. If you found this beneficial, give this video a like and hit the subscribe button to be notified for the next episode.